Yeah, this morning I had a interfaith program over at Geylang Serai. The whole hall was actually quite packed. Yeah, about 100 over people turned up. And I think majority were from the one of the church, I think Church of God or something. Yeah. So there were 3 speakers. Surprisingly, I thought one of the pastor would be sharing, but I didn't even see him there. Instead, there were 3 speakers, one from the Muslim faith, one from the Buddhist faith, myself, and then one from the Jains. Yeah, have you heard of Jains? Yeah, Jains. In the sutra, we actually see them. In Chinese, it's Qi Na Jiao. Yeah, Jains, then Nigantas. Yeah, so they were the contemporaries, the peers of the Buddha. Yeah, so in fact, they, in some ways, they maybe around the same time, or maybe slightly earlier than the Buddha. Yeah, because when the Buddha left the palace, there were already the yes. Stop playing with the slide, Yeah. So there were already the what do you call that? Jains. So today we had 3 speakers, and in the morning there was also a what do you call that? ERT, Emergency Response Team, Emergency Preparedness demonstration. So it was a demonstration of how to respond to it and how to actually the way to take care of lacerations or gunshot wounds and things like that. Yeah. So there were some guys who was in some combat gear with toy guns, and then coming in and enacting an attack. Yeah. So after that, then there was the dialogue. We start off with the panel sharing. So the Muslim speaker shared. It was quite funny because when I was told about this talk, initially it was called Free Your Mind. It's supposed to talk about mindfulness or what. Then later on, a few days ago, there was a change in the topic. So it was Free Your Mind, Misconceptions about Religion. Yeah. So I thought about it, and I thought, sometimes in those like talk show, like Stephen Colbert or David Letterman, the older one, then they have the top 10. Yeah. So, yeah. Do we have a clicker? No. Then you click for me. So when I point to you, then you click. Okay. So I started off. Of course, you all know me, but and most of the organizers know me, but the participants don't know me because I've been MIA for a while. So when I started off, I took over the mic. I was the second speaker, and I went, 大家早上好，阿弥陀佛. Then all of them was stunned a bit. And 早上好，早上好. And I went. 很高兴今天能够在亚龙市乃来参加这个宗教联谊会的这个活动。Then I let it sink in for a while, and all of them were like, "Okay." Then I said, "Well, this is the. If you think that I'm going to just speak in Mandarin, that I can't speak in English, then that's the first misconception that most people have about Buddhism. That Buddhists are usually just Chinese-speaking, Mandarin-speaking rather. There's no such a thing as Chinese-speaking because Chinese is the written language. Mandarin is the spoken language that we commonly use." Yeah. So then they broke into laughter, and that started off the whole session. Then I told them that I have here the top 10 list, like those talk show. So, number 1. all Buddhists are vegetarian. Then all of them laugh. Yeah, laugh. Yeah, this morning was way more spontaneous. So then I shared with them about how, yeah, this is the number one misconception, that all Buddhists are vegetarian. Not all Buddhists are vegetarian, yeah, and because in the Buddha's time, the Buddha himself went on alms round. So likewise his disciples, so they would accept whatever is given and they will eat accordingly. Yeah, so you don't expect the Buddha, to walk and then offer, and then curry chicken. No, yeah, he will basically take whatever they need and then give the rest away. So I shared with them about the practice of vegetarianism, that it is not an end by itself. Yeah, being a vegetarian is a means to an end. The means to cultivate love and compassion. Yeah, the truth is that if we were to partake in vegetarian diet, then it reduces the amount of suffering that is inflicted on others. But I told them, the thing is, even in Buddhism, we are all at different stages of the practice. So not everybody will choose to be a vegetarian. But the conception is that all Buddhists are vegetarian, and that's not true. So some Buddhists are vegetarian. Yeah. So you may start to see a pattern. Next slide. All Buddhists meditate, or are Buddhists, or are meditation masters. Yeah. So I told them, when I came back from US after a while, and I met with some uni friends and some ex-colleagues, one of the common questions people ask me is, so can you levitate? Can you float? Yeah, it was quite crazy. So the truth is, we don't do that. Yeah. In fact, I told my uni friends, if you want to levitate, there's an easier way. Yeah, just go to airasia.com. Yeah, spend some money and then you can fly all you want. Yeah. Next. We meditate not to levitate, we meditate to quieten our mind, to cultivate love, compassion, and wisdom. But not everybody meditate. Some Buddhists meditate. Yeah, so I share with them about the three practices, 戒定慧. Yeah, the first one is the precepts, the changing of our body and speech, basically our behavior. Yeah, but it cannot just stop there. It cannot just stop there. It must be internalized as well. Yeah, so I brought in about the topic on terrorism, about how there are people who have certain mindset and then they go and act upon those mindset. Yeah, then you can actually create some really bad results. So I also shared about how sometimes we have unhappy days at work and we get very frustrated, right? Yeah, and then we may even have funny thoughts like, oh, I want to kill my boss. Yeah, but we don't act upon those thoughts. So the first step is purifying our body and speech, then ultimately purifying our mind. Yeah, because if we don't purify the mind, those thoughts can linger and it can manifest in due time. Yeah. So meditation. Next. So then I told them, a bit sensitive, Now for the younger generation, this may be quite alien. Yeah, but for the past 20, 30 years, we have a lot of non-Buddhists going door to door and then spreading a lot of strange things. Yeah, this is the milder one. Yeah, people will tell Buddhists that, when you meditate, the devil will enter your mind. Yeah, and of course, most people who have heard this know what I'm talking about. Yeah, I'm not creating this. This is what people say to Buddhists. Yeah. Because they have the misconception, because they have the wrong idea about what meditation is about. Yeah. So then I shared with them about how, in fact, it is not just Buddhists who meditate, but even non-Buddhists meditate. Yeah. So about maybe 6 years ago, there was this Christian meditation seminar, called Common Grounds, organized by the Catholic Church. And I was the invited speaker for Buddhism, and I thought I'll be only one of the few who will be speaking. But in the end, Father Lawrence Freeman was there, the Muslim rep was there, the Hindu rep was there, Taoist rep was there. Yeah, so 5 of the 10 major religions in Singapore had representatives sharing on meditation. Yeah, so the truth is, all the religious tradition meditate, just in slightly different ways. Yeah. Yeah, so the misconception that meditation will bring the devil into your mind, that is not true. Yeah. Incense paper burning is part of Buddhism. Yeah. And the best thing is that I actually asked them to read out. Yeah, I didn't read out myself. It's a very large hall, 100 over people, so I asked them to read. Yeah. I almost didn't get the slides up because they somehow didn't prepare the projector, but they managed to do it at the very last minute. Yeah. So you can see the contrast, right, between the misconception and the fact. Yeah, the different color. One is black and white, and the other one is just nicer. So this is another misconception. Incense paper burning is not part of Buddhism. In fact, it is part of the Chinese culture. Well, after all, paper was invented by Cai Lun, who wasn't born in India. Yeah. So some of you may have heard me share this before. Think about it. Before Cai Lun invented paper, you cannot have incense paper. So those ancestors in the past, what do they get? Yeah. Today, when people fold and burn, they do this thinking, that way our ancestors can get something, get money to buy things, and then nowadays we even have iPhone paper iPhone to burn, iPad to burn, all kinds of things to burn. So before the invention of paper, then how? Yeah. So I share with them about how, when I share this in class to Buddhists, the younger generation will be like, yes. But the older generation initially will have this face of denial. Yeah. And then after that, disbelief. Oh yeah. Yeah. Something click inside and they go like, oh yeah, then, something doesn't make sense. Yeah. So the interesting thing is that because today's crowd in Geylang Serai, I think a good number of them are all from the church. So when they heard this, they were like, yeah. Yeah. But then I told them about how the truth is, you think about it, and I asked them, and I'll ask you now, how many of you, when your friend is having birthday, will send them, cute little birthday icon through WhatsApp or photos of birthday cakes, to your friends, those friends that you care enough to send them a photo, but not enough to buy a real cake. Yeah, all of them laugh as well. Yeah, and the truth is that that cake cannot even be eaten. Yeah, you cannot even touch it. And if your friend happen to run out of battery, your friend see you send something, and then just as he's going to open, the battery died. Yeah, so he cannot even see it, and your friend is left wondering what happened, and what the message was. So, what is it about incense paper burning? And then I share with them about how I asked them how many of them did the folding. How many of you did folding of Kim Chua? Oh, good number of you, huh? Yeah, recently, last time, huh? Recently, anybody do that? No. So, the thing is, you think about it, it's quite a laborious process. It's quite a laborious process. You sit there, and then with stacks of it, and then you do this, right? Yeah. And then after that, you fold one at a time. One at a time, no, you can't just take one stack and fold into one big fat. Yeah, you got to fold one at a time. So I told them, I said, who on earth would take some paper, fold, and then burn it away? Yeah. Who on earth would do that? If not out of love and devotion. Then I told them, you think about it, right? Guys and girls, when you are going after each other, what will you do? You take strips of paper, fold into small little hearts, put in a jar, and then give, right? Well, what does it do for the person? Nothing. Yeah, person who have to receive it so gratefully, so happily, and then after that, when they bring it home, they have to go and consider where to put this, and then look for the shelf and put it among all the other bottles that were given by other suitors. And then, once in a while they have to still have to dust it, and then throw, cannot throw. Keep for what? Yeah, doesn't do much really. It's really what we say, it's a thought that counts. It's a thought that counts. So then I related to them one account. Yeah, there was a student who wanted me to go and convince her mother to not burn incense paper. So it was quite funny because, first of all, the context is not funny. It was the father's wake. So when there, the mother and the auntie were there folding. So when I arrived, the mother and the auntie was like, oh, hello. Yeah, almost perhaps expecting me to go there and tell them not to fold, So I went there, sat down, and then my students sat down. Then I look at them and I say, Ji Kim Chua. And they say, yeah, 我们在这. Then I say, oh, good. And my student was like, what? Ask Sifu to come and discourage. Then I sit down and say, oh, Ji Kim Chua, good. You see, the thing is, if I had sat down and immediately criticized and say, oh, you all are doing this for what, they will just shut off. They may not immediately just quarrel with me, but they will probably stop listening to whatever I have to say. So when I sit down and I say, oh, good. Their eyes open up and they immediately want to talk to me. But I didn't do this just to trick them. Yeah, I was praising them for their devotion. Yeah, so I told them, I said, oh, it's good. Yeah, you are folding this, because you want to provide for your husband and so on. But when you do it, there's a way to do this that can really benefit. Yeah, as you fold, don't talk too much. Don't talk too much. Pay attention to what you are doing. Really fold it like you mean it. Yeah, don't one hand fold. Hey, 一點好，這樣哦，佢泰國冇呢度冇隻空洞嚟呵。Then it's really just mechanical, Yeah, but really use your heart and body. And then I told them, because they are Buddhists, I said, and while you are folding, recite Amitofo. Yeah. Then it becomes a purifying practice. Years back, throughout Singapore, there was this movement, interfaith movement, but the Singapore youth, Buddhist youth, they actually managed to convince all religion to come together to fold lotuses. Yeah, as an outreach of compassion towards one another, regardless of the religion, which was beautiful. So, youth being youth, they are quite anti incense burning, incense paper burning. So at that point in time, I told them, I said, so incense paper burning is not done by the Buddha, right? So how about lotus paper folding? Done by Buddha? Also not done by Buddha. What? In what way is that a Buddhist practice? Only because you put in Buddhist mindset, then it becomes a Buddhist practice. When the Buddha talked to Sigalaka, yeah, he was paying respect, worshipping the 6 directions. The Buddha didn't go in and say and criticize, you are stupid, you do this stupid practice. He didn't do that. Instead, he go there, he asked him first, what are you doing? And after that, after hearing what Sigalaka has to say, then the Buddha told him, there's another way to pay respect to the 6 directions. And that's how the Sigalabhada Sutta started. I like to think that I'm trying my best to follow in that direction. Not to just go in and then, or just because we never do it before, or just because it's not in exactly the same description as how it was 2,500-600 years ago, then we just meh. Yeah. So through that conversation at the table, the auntie and the mother, while they are folding, they really listen. So I share with them about how they can actually quieten their mind, and how if they do it that way, then there is gong tek, there's gong de, there's merit. Yeah, because if you are doing something mindfully, then you're training your mind. That's merit, right? Yeah. Why should we be so caught up with the form? So I told them, don't throw the baby out with the water. Yeah, just because it's a different format. Yeah, we should remember the intent for incense paper folding. Yeah, it stems from love and devotion for our loved ones. Yeah. Now I'm not encouraging incense paper burning also. I'm not encouraging that practice as well. But it's rather for those Akong Amma who have been doing it for so many years, do you expect them to just drop it? Hard. Yeah? Because it's an emotional thing. I would believe that they, from the time when they are small kids, they have seen their elders do it, and they probably participated in that and that was their way to, in a way, overcome grief. Their way of dealing with grief when their elders pass away. Their way to connect with one another, and relate how the departed one, have touched their life. So why should we be so, how do I put it? Why should we be so, this is the time where we can use the word judgmental correctly. Yeah. At the same time, we don't want them to end up having a gossip session, then here Sing or that Michael what no point. So we have 2-3 more. It's 1:35. Shall we get started with SGC? Then later we can revisit this. Okay? So we'll hold it at number 7, and then we'll come back at number 8. All right? So we went through this. Number 8. Huh?
Countdown.
Oh yeah, number 6. Countdown. Okay, number 6. Hinduism is part of Buddhism is part of Hinduism. Yeah. So I told them, going to be quite sensitive. Yeah, because in Hinduism, at some point, they assimilated Buddhism. And so they're not their fault, not present-day Hindus' fault. But if you ask Hindu friends, they will say, oh, Buddhism is part of Hinduism. But that cannot be further from the truth. Why? What is the basis for me to say that? There are some elder monks in other places who also agree and say that, oh, we are all the same. That is not right. Why? Number 1, if Buddhism is part of Hinduism or from Hinduism, then what is the basis? Why is it that there are so many incidences where Brahmins try to come and defeat the Buddha in his teaching? Why is it that the Buddha would refute the Brahmins in their teachings? Yeah? The claim to superiority and purity, yeah, which is part of the caste system, the Buddha rejected that. Yeah. If Buddhism is indeed from Hinduism or part of Hinduism, then there shouldn't be any quarrels. Yeah. So then why is there this misconception? Number 1 is because at some point, Buddhism, before assimilation, it became indistinguishable from Hinduism. But Hinduism and Buddhism is from the Indus continent. There are many religions from this area. Yeah, but just because they're from the same area doesn't mean that they're the same. Today in the morning, there were 3 Muslim, Buddhist, and Jain. Jain is also from India. Yeah. But just because we are from the same place doesn't mean we are the same. Yeah. We have quite different beliefs, yeah, and teachings. So this is one of the misconceptions. The Buddha is more akin to a scientist, much like Isaac Newton discovering the truth. Yeah? So in a way, while we say that the Buddha founded Buddhism 2,600 over years ago, he didn't exactly found something. Yeah, he discovered, he rediscovered the truth that was always there. It's just like Isaac Newton, before he discovered or established the law of gravity, it's not as though things were floating around. Yeah? Things were behaving the way they were behaving. Besides Isaac Newton, there were many others who tried to describe this behavior. But Isaac Newton is credited to be the one who formalized, who come up with a structured description of many things, among them the law of gravity. So similarly, the Buddha, among many others, tried to describe patterns that we see, patterns that describe the world as it is. This pattern, this principle, we call it Dharma. Yeah? In fact, the meaning of Dharma, one of the meaning is structure and principle. So, the Buddha is basically a person, well, a very special person, no less. Yeah? Just like there are many physicists, but Isaac Newton is the one physicist who first come up with a method of description that describes it so well. Until today, we can still use the same equations and determine how fast and how long it's going to take for an object to drop, yeah, and how objects interact. For the Buddha, it was not just about objects interacting. What he observed is how human beings interact. Yeah. But he was not just a scientist, he was more than that. Yeah. So what we call Buddhism is a continuation of that flow of truth, that teaching of truth, that body of truth that was passed down over the centuries. Buddhists do not go to heaven. Can you imagine this morning there were 100 over participants and most of them were not Buddhists. Yeah, in fact, a group number of them were from the Church of God. So I thought it was a very cordial, a very friendly exchange. And I told them, I said, it's only in Singapore and that we can have this kind of very open dialogue, that I can just share things like that. Because in many countries, you share this, you're going to get into very big trouble, Yeah? But I want to highlight this because, next slide, because this is a misconception. There's a cross struck out. Buddhists do go to heaven. Yeah? Even Buddhists sometimes don't know that we can go to heaven. But in the sutta, in the Buddha's time, there were so many cases where the Buddha highlighted, yeah, the means to go to heaven. But we don't see that as a final destination. And that's the key thing. The Buddha had many names. One of them was Loka Vidu, the knower of the world. In a way, he is almost like a walking encyclopedia. Yeah? But even more importantly, he knows the different destination and he knows the different causes that results in those destinations. In other words, he knows that there are human realm and how a person can be reborn again as a human. He knows of the different states of deprivation in hell. He knows the causes. What are the things people would do that results in that? He knows the same for animal and ghost realm, and likewise the various heavenly realms. So, you can imagine in the Buddha's time where he would share with people all this. Yeah? And so, from that, then the Buddha basically left it to people to decide. What do you want? where do you want to go today? Yeah? Then depending on what you do, you get that result. Yeah. Loka vido. Bad karma refers to bad results. In fact, this is more a misconception on Buddhists, because it's quite common in Singapore. Yeah, when something bad happens, we say, "Oh, bad karma." Yeah, but the word karma has become so ubiquitous. It's so common and universal today that even non-Buddhists use it. Online, you will sometimes see karma points. Yeah, in forums, on some websites. Karma actually means action, intentional action. Oh, grammar mistake. Intentional, not intention. I made the mistake. Yeah. So the law of karma is really about how our actions, intentional actions, have results. This teaching is really about teaching responsibility. Yeah? That when we do things, there are consequences. And we should take responsibility for our actions. Yeah. So, to think, oh, bad things happen, then we say bad karma, or yeah, that's actually not quite right. The result is actually vipaka. Yeah, vipaka. Yes. Actually, it's inside the 大乘白法明文 also, 毗婆家. Yeah. So, however, nowadays we tend to forget that it refers to action. Perhaps it's because, as the Buddhist teaching goes, 菩萨为因众生为果. Bodhisattvas, the cultivators, the enlightened ones, they are fearful of the cause. When you are doing the harmful deeds, they are fearful of that. Fearful in what sense? Fearful of harming people. Fearful of the evilness of the action. Unwholesomeness of the action. Sentient beings, unenlightened beings, oh, not so afraid of that. Afraid of the results. Yeah. So perhaps it's because of that we are so fixated and we just we are only reminded of karma, the law of karma, when we see bad results. Before you see bad results, you don't think about karma. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, but the teaching is about responsibility for our action. The same can and should be said about the observation of precepts. It's a clear recognition that our actions have results. And so, being mindful of our intent, we want to conduct ourselves in a wholesome manner so that we do not harm others. Next. Well, this is where, in the morning, in most interfaith talk, this will bring a moment of awkward silence. Yeah. There's no God in Buddhism. Yeah. So I put this as a misconception. Why? Because there are so many gods. So imagine on the big screen they see this huge list, so huge that they cannot even read. Yeah. Then there are many realms of gods in Buddhism. Yeah. The only thing is that we don't subscribe to a creator God. We don't believe that there are some god or gods that is responsible for who we are. We are responsible for who we are. Yeah. So I highlight this in almost all interfaith talks that I give. And the reason is because, and I told them this morning, many times at interfaith circle, we tend to gloss over this. We tend to say, oh, we all have this common belief. In fact, the IRO president this morning said that we all share in this common belief in a God. Then I'm like, no. Yeah. So when we highlight this, sometimes it makes people feel uneasy. Yeah. But the more we don't talk about this, the more we just ignore the fact that we are different. And different in what way? People think that Buddha is God and is central to Buddhism and we worship him. Yeah. This is a misconception as well. We may say about bowing down is also worship. Yeah, but it's actually slightly different. I don't say that all Buddhists, that no Buddhists worship the Buddha. I'm sure there are some Buddhists who worship the Buddha. I would say that when I was young, I probably prayed to the Buddha like any other religion. Yeah, but at the core of the Buddhist teaching, it's not like that. Buddha is not central. Yeah, Buddha is not God. The Dharma is central, and the Dharma serves not as an end by itself, but as a means to end suffering. Rightly speaking, we say that in Buddhism, all sentient beings is the core of Buddhism. Buddhism focuses on sentient beings. We're not so concerned about how this will come about or how this will end. We're more concerned about how suffering arises and how we can put an end to suffering of all sentient beings. Not just Buddhists, not just humans, but any creature, big, medium or small, far or near, yeah, seen or unseen. That is the core of the Buddhist teaching. And Nirvana. Nirvana is another name for heaven. It's another misconception. Yeah, because if you think about it, in Singapore there are 10 recognized religions. 9 of them have a belief in a God, an afterlife which is either heaven or hell. Yeah. Buddhism is the only one that doesn't. So I sometimes if you put ourselves into the shoes of those in other religion, it's very hard to understand Buddhism. Like, why are you so like that? You know? Because everybody have the same framework. Why are you so different? It's like you use Android versus Samsung. But even Android and Samsung, they more or less have certain features that are the same. Yeah? If you use a Mac versus a Windows, one have the close button on this side, one have on the other side. But both still have close button. Yeah? There are certain concepts that are the same. But Buddhism is just so radical, so different. We have to understand that in the Buddha's time, he was more a maverick. Yeah, he was more a maverick than an established institution of religion. Yeah. He was seen as someone who is new. So, what is Nirvana? Nirvana is the cessation of suffering. Yes. Nirvana is cessation, is the cessation of suffering, the end of suffering. The end of suffering for all sentient beings, not just Buddhists, not just human, but all sentient beings alike. Yeah. So, when I shared this morning, the aim was to help everybody recognize this. Yeah. And again, not to convert people to become Buddhists. I don't think you convert people with this. Yeah. But even more importantly, not to make enemies also. Bonus slide. You notice that is number 1. This is number 0. Read for me this.
We have to be the same to be friends. If we are different, we must be enemies.
Yeah. So I told them, just in case you are still not clear, those texts that is on a white background, those are the misconception. Yeah, this is a misconception. The orange colored background is the correct one. Okay, this is a misconception. We tend to think, oh, this is my friend, we are same. At least we must have some similarity, then we are friends. We have so much similarity, we are best friends. Yeah, we think alike, we eat alike, we dress alike, we look alike. Twins. Yeah, we call that twins. Oh, because you are different. Why? Maybe it's because when we are different, we may argue. And when you argue, you're trying to see who is right and who is wrong. You're trying to prove that person wrong. You're not trying to find out who is right. Do you realize that? When we argue, half the time, we are just trying to prove him wrong. We're not trying to find what is right. And as a result, we have a lot of negativity, we have a lot of enmity towards one another. How to be friends like that? of course we become enemies. But the truth is, nope. We don't have to be the same to be friends. And just because we are different, we don't have to be enemies. Yeah. As always, whenever I share in interfaith and I tell them that we don't share in the belief of a creator God, they'll go, and I tell them, I said, no, we don't look at you as enemies. Yeah, we are just different. We just have different ideas about this world. Yeah, that doesn't mean that I'm your enemy. So think about it. Yeah, not just about religion, but even among friends, even in a family. When someone disagrees with us, does it mean that we must look at them as our enemy? No. In fact, many times for myself, it's because I get disagreement from my Christian friends when I was much younger that made me become more aware of what Buddhism is. Yeah. There were other things that I shared this morning pertaining to terrorism, pertaining to violence. Just one last thing I want to share with you all about what I shared this morning. In Myanmar, recently, there is the Ashin something, yeah. A lot of violence. As a Buddhist, we cannot say that that is correct. But recently in the French business school, when we had some classes, some students asked me, what do you think about that? My take is this. You see, if Buddhism is against Islam, if Myanmar's Buddhists are against Islam, then it shouldn't be only in the Rakhine state. Because in the whole, Myanmar is not a small place, you know. Rakhine state is in the northwest part of Myanmar. The whole Myanmar stretches there's a very large coast and has intersection with a few other countries. Surely there are Muslims all over Myanmar. Agree? So why is it that there's only conflict over there? You have to wonder. When I was in Myanmar in 2007, for 3 months retreat, there was a huge protest. That was 10 years ago. Gosh. There was this huge protest. Many monasteries in the city, the monks came out to march in the street. What happened to them? Do you remember? They were basically bashed by the troops. And these are Myanmar's troops. They are, in all likelihood, all Buddhists as well. This is what they would do. Right? Why? Because those monks... Now, I'm not here to say who is right and wrong. I'm not into politics. But what we know is that caused some unrest, which to the incumbent military government, they felt that that was disruptive of the status quo. So this morning, in front of Associate Professor Fatima Latif, I asked her, I said, what if, of course never going to happen, but what if, okay, now Geylang Serai, we decide to be independent. What do you think will happen? I said, but 想都不要想啊. Imagine if that happens, what do you think will happen? I think the Presidential Council for the security, whatever, they will convene, all the religious leaders will come together, and then there will be a lot of advisors who will ask to have a meeting with Prof. Fatima Latif. I told her in front of her, I said, I think that will happen. But different countries have different ways of dealing with things. So today, if Geylang Serai decide to be independent, I think police will come, civil defense, police force, SPF will come, and if we put up a fight, they'll bring in the Ang Chia, you know. And this is a fact of life. Ask yourself, if you are part of the government, and some groups just decided, hey, I want to be independent. Woodlands suddenly say want to be independent. Yishun. Why Yishun? Right? So I told the student, I said, I think it's less about Buddhism versus Islam, Because if it is, it should be the whole of Myanmar. But it's only at Rakhine State. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. Killing is always wrong in Buddhism. But I'm saying it's probably less simplistic. Less simplistic than what some of the media is trying to portray to us, that it's Buddhism against Islam. It's not so simple. Yeah. So that was the sharing I gave this morning. I hope it has been insightful for you all also.